Hello and welcome. You're watching the Daily News Simplified, which is your one stop solution to daily current affairs analysis. Now, today is 21st of May, and we have in our bouquet of articles, 7 important articles for us, which we'll try to simplify over a course of next 50 minutes or so. Let's move to the first article straight away. But before moving forward, please make sure to like this video as it helps us keep motivated and encourages us to put more and more content. Now, the first article of the day, which you can see appeared in the Business Line newspaper. There are two articles on the same topic, which highlights that the government it is planning to bring a new law which will facilitate the sale of or the sale of agricultural produce between different states. Now, marketing of agricultural produce, it is an important topic from mains perspective because it is given in GS paper 3 syllabus straight away. Further, this topic, that is marketing of agricultural produce, it has been asked by UPSC before from time to time. The most recent being the mains of the year 2022, where you can see the question appeared on the bottlenecks in the upstream and downstream process of marketing of agricultural products in the country. So we'll discuss in detail how this agricultural marketing takes place and what are the issues before discussing the way forward. Now, most of you know that the sale of agricultural products in the country happens like this, that there's a roadside vendor who sells you the agricultural produce such as vegetables and fruits. Now, where do you think these hawkers procure their food items from? The answer is quite simple. Because in India, the agricultural sale and its produce, the sale of agricultural produce, it is governed by the law which is known as Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Act, and these acts they are passed by respective state governments. Now, this act it mandates that the sale of agricultural produce will first happen in AMC authorized mandis, and the farmers they have to sell their produce first in mandis, and then the sellers of these agricultural produce will buy the commodities from the mandi itself. So in this context, let us understand what are the issues which the agricultural marketing framework currently subjected to. Now, I highlighted that the market of agricultural commodities it is currently under the monopoly of APMC mandated mandis. So this creates what you can call the segmentation of agricultural produce market, because as I've already highlighted, farmers they only have to sell to the mandis, and then this reduces the competition for buying the products from the farmers. Hence, this market segmentation it reduces the competition, thereby prevents the farmers to get the best price for their agricultural commodities. So this was the first issue. Now these agricultural mandis they are quite separated from each other, which means that there is a high spatial dispersion between these APMC mandated mandis. Now, when the mandis they are located in faraway locations, it increases the transportation cost that the farmers are currently subjected to, because they have to transport their farm produce from straight to their farms to their APMC mandated mandis. So in this way, the transportation cost which is incurred by the farmers currently it is quite high, and this in a way affects their ability to get the best prices, because then they'll be selling their agricultural commodities at a much higher price because of the increased logistical cost. Now this was the second challenge. Let us move to the third challenge, which is the cartelization by traders in the APMC mandis. Now, the APMC mandis, it is manned by various traders who get their license from APMC mandis. Hence, these traders, they form what you can call a cartel. Because when you are as a farmer, you going to a agricultural mandi, And when these traders they form a cartel, it prevents the price discovery for farmers. Thereby, farmers they get low price for their agricultural produce. Further, there is also a high degree of intermediation because farmers they are first selling their products to mandis, and then the sellers they are procuring their products from mandis itself. So instead of selling directly to sellers, the farmers are selling it to mandis. Thereby, it this intermediation by mandi and its agents it adds to the total cost of agricultural produce. That's why it leads to high degree of intermediation, which and hence the farmers they are not able to get the adequate amount of money for their farmers produce, because the end cost which is paid by consumers like you and I, only the 15 to 40% of the cost is then transferred to farmers because of this high degree of intermediation, because the rest of the money it is cornered by the traders which man these mandis. Further, these mandis and the agents they have to pay licensing fees in order to operate in these mandis. Further, for every transaction there are certain amount of taxes which are levied by these mandis, and these licensing fees and taxes they are currently quite high because it adds to around 15% of the total value of agricultural produce which is traded in the mandi. So because of this high license fees and taxes, the amount of money that we pay for agricultural produce it increases. Understood? So not just the farmers are getting the adequate return, but even the end consumers like you and I, we end up paying more money because of this fragmented and intermediary structure of the APMC mandis. And in addition to that, there are also poor storage and transport infrastructure in the country, which prevents the farmers from storing their agricultural produce in cold storages. Hence, it leads to increased amount of food wastage in the country. And it was estimated few years back that approximately 20 to 25% of entire country's agricultural produce it goes to wastage because of this poor transport and storage infrastructure. And this amounts to about 92,000 crore of rupees. So this is the absolute amount which is quite high, and this leads to higher wastage of country's agricultural produce. So these were the issues that currently plague the agricultural marketing framework in the country. So in this context, let us now understand what should be the or in this context, let us now understand what are the agricultural marketing reforms which have been undertaken by the government in the recent past. The first is that the government it enacted an Model Agricultural Produce and Livestock Marketing Act in the year 2017. Now, this is a model act which was brought by central government, and it in a way indicated to the state governments on what kind of reforms they should do in their respective state APMCs Act. Now, the intention or the purpose to bring this model law was to create a single agri market in the country, and this single agri market will result into just one license which is given to the trader, and it will enable the trader to underdo their business in any agricultural market in the country. Further, this will just also create a unified market across the country which will enable farmers to sell their agricultural produce and also the produce of their livestock. Understood. However, this was just a model act because ultimately the implementation of APMC Act is under the domain of state governments. So, barring few states like Bihar, many of the state governments they have not undertaken serious reforms in this regard. Now, also the government brought Model Contract Farming Act in the year 2018, which aims to enable the farmers to sell their produce directly to the food manufacturers or food processing industries, because contract farming means there is a contract between seller of agricultural produce, that is farmer, and buyer of agriculture produce that are food processing industries. Hence, it aims to remove the amount of intermediation which is done by the APMC mandis currently. Now, the third reform in this regard was creating a electronic national agricultural market. Now, this particular portal, it acts as a network of existing APMC mandis through a virtual or online platform, and it aims to unify agricultural market in the country, which means a farmer who is selling the product in one APMC can be brought by a seller who is located in another APMC in another part of the country. However, in practice, the implementation or the unification of agricultural market currently has only been achieved at the state level, and the reforms suggest that they should be undertaken at a national level at the earliest possible time to achieve the entire unification of countries' agricultural markets. Understood. Now, the fourth step in this regard is that the government has currently undertaking upgradation of village markets, which are known as Grameen Hats, into grams or Grameen agricultural markets. Because transforming village markets into a Grameen market will enable the farmers to directly sell their produce to these Grameen Hats itself. Hence, it will in a way reduce the logistic cost for farmers and also improve the access of agricultural products to consumers in the country. Understood. So this was the fourth step that was taken by the government. Now also I've highlighted that countries' infrastructure with respect to storage and transport of agricultural produce, it is in an adequate state. Further, to scale up this infrastructure, they require lot amount of money and also a huge amount of time because these are long gestation projects. So in this regard, to provide funds for constructing of storage and transport infrastructure, the government, it brought forward agricultural market infrastructure fund, which aims to provide funds for storage and transport infrastructure. Further, in order to increase the incomes of farmer, the government, it brought forward an agricultural exports policy, because this policy will enable farmers not just to sell their agricultural produce in the domestic market, but also sell these produce into export markets, which will lead to increased farmers' income. So these were the recent reforms that have been taken by the government. However, these reforms have paid somewhat uneven dividends, because although agricultural exports policy has promoted exports, however, the lack of interest by the state government had prevented the liberalization of agricultural markets in the country. So in this regard, let us take a look at what should be the ideal way forward in order to ease the restrictions in countries' agricultural markets. So the first suggestion in this regard is to modify the existing laws. Now, only in the year 2020, government brought forward 3 laws which were collectively known as farm laws, as these laws were aimed to liberalize the country's agricultural market, because these laws meant that a farmer can sell their products to any agricultural market in the country and not just the mandated APMC mandis. However, there were certain protests in northern states such as Punjab and Haryana, which forced the government to repeal these Farms Act in the subsequent year. So this brings our attention with the need to modify existing laws in the country, because by modifying the existing laws, it will enable farmers to sell their produce to local mandis, village markets, as well as food processing industries. Also, there is a need to provide alternative marketing options to farmers, most important being contract farming, which will enable farmers to sell their produce directly to the food processing industries and other downward linkages. Also, there's a need for farmers to sell their direct farm produce directly to undertake derivative trading as well as sell them directly to food processing industries. Hence, exploring the alternative marketing options will enable farmers to reduce their dependence on APMC mandis. Understood. However, there is certain roadblocks in this alternative marketing options because currently any procurer of the agricultural produce, be it private players, they are subjected to restrictions of amount of commodities that they can store as per the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. Hence, there is an inherent need to liberalize or restructure this Essential Commodities Act to prevent stockholding norms, which in a way discourages these contract farming and food processing industries to procure directly to farmers. Understood. So, first of all, there is a need to modify existing laws which enables farmers to sell directly to local mandis, food processing industries, and also enable these local mandis and food processing industries with liberalized stockholding norms in order to encourage them to procure directly from farmers. Further, as I've already highlighted, that farmers in their individual basis deal directly with mandi and their traders. Hence, it reduces their bargaining power because of cartelization of traders. So, in this regard, encouraging the formation of farmer producer organization will increase farmers' bargaining power and will also help these farmers achieve economies of scale. Because first of all, these organizations together, they can plan what farmer will grow what kind of agricultural crop, and they will deal with mandis in an organization wide basis and not on an individual basis. So it increases the risk taking abilities of farmers and prevents them to be subjected to cartelization of traders. Additionally, as I've already highlighted, countries' marketing infrastructure or storage infrastructure, it is inadequate. So there is a need to encourage creation of storage and marketing infrastructure in the country, especially construction of cold storage, as well as efficient transportation network, which will enable transport and storing of agricultural commodities in India. So this was the entire discussion related to challenges which the farmers currently face when they are about to market their agricultural produce in the country. So with this, we move to the second news event of the day, which is related to the death of Iranian president who died because of the helicopter crash. Now this event was covered extensively in today's newspapers, primarily being the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now, death of an Iranian president is a significant event in the already volatile Middle East part of the globe, which is West Asia when you consider it from India's perspective. Now, India is an important strategic partner of Iran. Hence, this development, it is important as far as Indian interests are concerned. And this particular topic, it is important from GS paper 2 perspective. Further, questions related to Iran's interaction with the other countries, especially that of West and US, it has been a subject of UPSC question in the recent past, because in 2018 a question appeared on implication of US Iran nuclear pact controversy. So in this regard, we'll discuss how death of an Iranian president affects the interest of Middle East, and then it affects the interest of India in general. But first, let us understand Iran's domestic policy, because this politics affects Iran's foreign policy in general. Now, the position of president in Iran is different from that of India, because Iranian president, he functions under the supreme authority of the supreme leader of Iran, who currently is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Now, although the Iranian president, he functions under supreme leader, however, he plays a significant role in countries' day-to-day politics. For example, as far as his political role is concerned, he mediates between countries' legislature on one hand and countries' executive on another. In addition, the Iranian president he also appoints key members of the cabinet such as ministers and vice president. Uh, Further, the most important part of Iranian president's day-to-day work is his important role in framing foreign policy decision. Because the outgoing president, which was Mr. Raisi, he played a key role in negotiating the nuclear deal with US, which was known as JCPOA. Further, he also brokered a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran with active involvement of China. So this was important achievement of Raisi as he played a major decision in country's foreign policy. However, what is the outlook of Iran's foreign policy that can be best understood by understanding the equations in country's domestic policy? Because the country's current political system it is directly affected by Islamic revolution that happened in Iran back in 1979, and it created two poles in Iran's current politics. The first pole, it constitutes the conservatives in the country who directly subscribe to the Shia ideology and its implementation in form of Sharia law. Now these conservatives they implement religious codes across the society and they gain support especially from the poor section of Iranian population. On the other hand, there are reformists in the Iranian politics who although subscribe to the tenets of country's revolution, however, they have a more liberal outlook because they support rapprochement with West on one hand, in addition to supporting greater rights for women and subscribing to the ideas of human rights. However, in recent times, the trend in the country has been more tilted towards the conservatives or the more radical section of Islamic society of Iran. And the outgoing president, which was Mr. Raisi, he subscribed to this conservative ideology. So, in this regard, let us understand what was Raisi's approach towards the Iranians' day-to-day politics and in addition to its foreign policy. First of all, after coming to power, Mr. Raisi he supported regional groups that currently exist in the Middle Eastern region, and these are termed as 3H, that is Hamas, which operates in Gaza, Hezbollah, who operate in Lebanon, as well as Houthi, who are rebels in the country of Yemen. Now, all these three non-state actors, they are directly supported by the Iranian political regime. And these non-state actors, they are currently in conflict with the state of Israel. Now, earlier, Iran, it was involved in a conflict with Israel, although it was involved indirectly. Because Iran supported these non-state actors and these non-state actors attacked the interest of Israel. However, recently, after Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Syria, the Iran it was involved in direct conflict with Israel, and this has created quite a lot of disturbance in the Middle Eastern part of the globe. Now, in addition to its conflict with Israel, after coming to power, Mr. Raisi also subscribed to country's nuclear program. Because although Iran it was involved in a nuclear pact with America, which prevented Iran from scaling up its reserves of weapons grade uranium. However, after President Trump of United States, he pulled out of this particular agreement. Iran, under the leadership of Raisi, went ahead with their nuclear program, increasing the levels of their weapons grade uranium. Hence, it put Iran in direct conflict with that of West, particularly with that of United States. And supporting the anti-West outlook, Mr. Raisi also decided to support Russia in its war with Ukraine. Because Iran, it supported Russia through supplying them with armed drones, which gave Russia an upper hand in its conflict with Ukraine. Further, Mr. Raisi, he was also responsible for crackdown on the domestic protesters who were protesting against the need to wear hijab in the country. So not just he put stop to the protests which happened in the domestic sector of the Iran, but it also had a hardline approach towards country's foreign policy. And this hardline approach brought Iran in directly conflict with Western nations, particularly with that of US and Israel. Now, in response, these Western countries they imposed economic sanctions of Iran. Now, these economic sanctions it affects Indian interest directly because although India is a strategic and an important partner of Iran, but it is also an important partner of West. Hence, any sanctions or effect on Iran, which is located in India's extended neighborhood, it negatively affects India's interest. So, in this regard, let us understand what is importance of Iran for India's strategic and economic interest. First of all, Iran it provided India with supplies of crude oil. However, since the Iran was sanctioned by the Western nations, India had to minimize its purchase of crude oil from Iran. So, this in a way affected India's ability to secure its energy needs. Understood? Further, India is undertaking regional connectivity projects, especially with respect to construction of Chabahar port in Iran. Because as you can see from this graph, Chabahar port it provides India with access to Afghanistan and Central Asian republics. However, due to sanctions by US, India has seen delays in construction of Chabahar port, and it was only last week as India was able to sign a pact with Iran which enabled India to operate this Chabahar port. Further, interest of Indian citizen it is also affected by the sanctions which have been imposed by Iran, which have been imposed on Iran by the Western countries. Because first of all, Indian businesses who have significant interest in India, they are unable to undertake day-to-day transactions because of economic sanctions. Also, Indian citizens, they have seen various negatively affect or Indian citizens and their interests have been negatively affected. Hence, Indian government has to engage extensively with Iranian authorities to take care of the interest both of individual and business interest of Indian citizens. So this highlights that the current geopolitical minefield in the state of Iran and around the Middle East, it negatively impacts India's interest in general. Because first of all, India has to navigate between its interest with respect to Iran, that is energy security, regional connectivity and citizens' interest, and it has to balance these interests with that of India's engagement with Western countries. Because Western countries like US and Israel, they are important strategic partners of India as well. So this was the discussion in the third article, and with this we move to the next article of the day, which appeared in the Business Line newspaper. Now this is important because this article explains the real meaning of India's Atmanirbhar Bharat policy. And it is also important because the author of this article is the member of RBI's Monetary Policy Committee. Now, the author, she highlights India has changed its industrial policy in recent times in order to attain self-sufficiency, which means Atmanirbhar Bharat. However, this Atmanirbhar policy, it is quite different from import substitution policy, which India subscribed to in the early 50s and 60s. So, in the course of today's discussion, we'll understand what this Atmanirbharta is all about and how it is different from import substitution policy. Now, this news article, it is important from GS Paper 3 syllabus because the syllabus highlights changes in industrial policy and its effect on country's industrial growth. Further, the subject of change in industrial policy has been keen area of interest for UPSC. Case in point, this PYQ of the year 2017. So let us discuss what this Atmanirbharta or Atmanirbhar Bharat means. Is it import substitution? As per today's article, it is quite different from import substitution because this Atmanirbhar policy, it wants to make India self-sufficient. However, it wants to integrate India's economy with that of world. Because currently India is a growing economy and its needs and the needs of its country's citizen can be fulfilled by integrating India into global markets, which means that India has to build its capacity of country's manufacturing sector. First of all, after liberalization of India's economy in early 90s, India mainly subscribed to growth model, which was service-led growth model. However, this model was not able to scale up the employment generation in the country. Hence, in this regard, the current government's policy of Atmanirbhar Bharat, it means capacity building of country's manufacturing sector. Because this sector has the potential to create more and more jobs in the economy. So, in this regard, the author, she highlights that India's manufacturing sector can be scaled, first of all, to promote manufacturing-led growth, which I've already highlighted. It aims to increase the amount of job opportunities in India. Further, there is also the need to make country's manufacturing process more and more efficient, because not just producing good amount of products, but it is also important to make these products in an economic or cheaper manner. So increasing the efficiency of manufacturing sector will enable India's product to be more competitive in the export markets. Further, there is also a need to lower the cost of doing business, because this will reduce the amount of input costs that a manufacturing facility will then have to incur, which will automatically reduce the cost of their products. Further, in order to promote manufacturing sector in the country, the government, it is extending temporary incentives. The most important example of which is the production linked incentive scheme. Now, these incentives are aimed to be temporary in order to first of all promote manufacturing and make them Atmanirbhar without the active government support in near future. Understood? Further, increasing the capacity of country's manufacturing sector will also enable India to participate in the global value chain. Because since the COVID crisis, the world has become more aware of the risk that is imposed by the dominance of China on global supply chain. Hence, diversifying the production of important commodities between different countries is the need of the hour as respect to global economy is concerned. Hence, many companies such as Apple, they are exploring alternative manufacturing locations for manufacturing their products such as iPhones. In this regard, India has become a major manufacturer of global iPhones, and this highlights the need for participation in global value chains, because it not just increases current India's manufacturing capabilities, but it also reduces the amount of import that India currently does. Further, the most of investment in the country, it is currently done through foreign direct investment, which not just brings more capital into India, but also exposes India with global technology. However, this FDI, it just constitutes about 2% of country's GDP, whereas major investment, it comes from domestic sector in the country, which accounts for more than 30% of total investment with respect to GDP. So there's a need to diversify opportunities for investment, as it will reduce India's dependence on FDI currently. Further, to manufacture more and more products in the domestic territory, any country, it also requires significant amount of human capital, which provides industries with skilled and technical workforce. Hence, in this regard, the country, that is India, it requires to scale up its education outcomes, because financing educational institutions and collaboration between industries and academia will promote development of skilled and technical workforce, which will then act as a human capital for countries' manufacturing sector. Hence, this is all about countries Atmanirbhar Bharat. That first of all, India has to become a manufacturing hub, not just to cater the domestic needs, but also to cater the needs of global market. Hence, in this regard, Atmanirbhar Bharat, it envisages not import substitution, rather integration of Indian economy into global value chain. Further, diversifying investments, not just from FDI but also from domestic investments, by promoting ease of doing business. Reforms in country's judiciary will promote investments in the country, not just from foreign but also from domestic sources. In addition, there is a need to provide human capital which will man these industries, which will then improve educational outcome in the country. So this is what Atmanirbhar is all about, that it increases confidence of Indian economy in general. Hence, this was all for mains related discussion today. And let us move to the second set of articles, the first of which appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, various forms of democracy, they are in news because currently elections are going on in India. Now, the form of democracy that currently exists in India, it is known as representative democracy, because people like you and I, we choose our representatives who then decide on what kind of political policies that India should subscribe to. And this is known as representative democracy because we vote for our representatives, and the political act that every citizen currently they need to do is to vote for their representatives. And in this regard, today's article highlights the need for radical democracy in India. Now, this particular section of political theory, it is important from UPSC Prelims perspective, because in recent times we have seen that more amount of questions they are dealing with direct tenets of Indian polity subject. For example, there was this question in 2020 that highlighted the common point of convergence between Gandhiism and Marxism. Further, it is also important from GS paper 2 perspective, because this radical democracy, it was suggested by M.N. Roy during the framework or framing of Indian constitution. Hence, it is important as far as evolution of Indian constitution is concerned. So in this regard, let us understand what is this radical democracy in the first place. Now, it is quite different from participatory or representative democracy that India currently subscribe to, because currently most of the citizens in the country, they only participate in the political process due to their ability to vote for their representatives. On the other hand, this radical democracy, it is a philosophy based on Marxist tradition, and it highlights more active and direct role of citizens in the country. That means they participate directly in country's political process, which aims to deepen current country's democratic credential. And this, in a way, that is radical democracy, it intends to challenge the current notion of representative democracy, as it advocates for more inclusive and participatory mechanisms. In this regard, let us understand the key aspects of radical democracy. First of all, this radical democracy, it aims to increase public involvement in country's policy or politics, which means Indian citizens, They can directly participate in country's political process. For example, citizens, they are directly participating in formation of budgets and enacting of these budgets. Hence, it intends to increase the participatory governance by any citizen. Further, it subscribed to the ideology of decentralization of power, that is, moving the power away from that of central government. Further, this model of democracy, that is radical democracy, it encourages pluralism and inclusion. Because, for example, in a representative democracy like ours, the participation of marginalized and downtrodden section is minimum because of their numerical minority. However, by radical democracy, it intends to increase the participation of the marginalized section because of decentralization of power. And this model of democracy, it also encourages grassroots movement in the country, which means collective participation and collective action of citizens. And all these measures, they are intended to act against the elitist form of democracy, which means certain elite sections of society, they gain power, and this prevents the marginalized section from gain power. Hence, these radical Democrats, they favor against the elitist control of any political structure. Further, these radical Democrats, they also question the established institution, and they emphasis on need for social justice, that is reducing the amount of economic as well as social inequalities. Understood? So these are the key aspects of radical democracy, and based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Now, which of the following statements, they accurately describe the concept of radical democracy? The first statement, extensive political involvement in political decision making beyond the act of traditional voting, which is correct because I've already highlighted the radical Democrats, they promote extensive political involvement in order to make the governance more participatory. Further, centralization of power in small elite to ensure effective governance, which is incorrect because radical Democrats, they promote decentralization and not centralization of power. Further, inclusion of diverse and marginalized voices in political process is a correct statement of radical democracy because it aims to promote pluralism and inclusion in any society by promoting participation of the marginalized and downtrodden communities. Fourth statement, establishment of hierarchical structure to maintain order and control is an incorrect statement because the radical Democrats, they subscribe to egalitarian structure and not hierarchical structure. So as only two statements, that is first and third, is correct, hence option B is the right answer to this practice question. Now moving on to the next article, which you can see appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now this article highlights the challenges which is posed to competition structure in the country, and this competition structure, it is maintained by the Competition Commission of India, which is a statutory body. Hence this topic is important from GS paper 2 perspective. Further, questions related to constitutional and other important bodies have been subjected to UPSC's question, especially in the prelims of 2023. So in this context, let us understand what is this Competition Commission of India. Now this body, it is a statutory body which was formed, and it is enacted to enforce the provision of Competition Act of the year 2002. Further, this authority composes of chairperson and 6 members who are all appointed by the central government. Now, the qualification for the members and chairperson, it means that they are experts in the field of finance, economic, business, and the experience that they should have should be of at least 15 years. Further, the functions that this body discharges is that it aims to eliminate practices that have adverse effect on the competition, promote and sustains competition, and it protects the interest of consumers in the market. Further, this body it is mandated to give its opinion on the competition issues. Because the recent merger between Air India and Vistara, it was subjected to approval of Competition Commission of India, which highlights the need of such body in discharging or undertaking the assessment of competition framework in the country. Further, this body it also undertakes competition advocacy for creating more awareness for implementation of competition law. So in this regard, let us solve the practice question. Now, with reference to Competition Commission of India, consider the following statements. The first statement, it was established under the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act of the year 1969, which is incorrect as it was established based on Competition Act of the year 2002 and not MRTP Act. Now, second statement, all its members they are appointed by the central government, which is a correct statement because both the chairperson and 6 members, all of them they are appointed by the central government. The third statement, the Minister of State and for Corporate Affairs is the ex officio chairperson of CCI, which again is an incorrect statement because I have already highlighted the chairperson as well as members, they are experts in the field of competition, business, public finance or commerce. Hence, these are not political appointees. So, the third statement is also correct. So, as only second statement was correct, hence option A is the right answer. Now, let us consider another article you can see which appeared in the Hindu newspaper. Now, this article, it highlights that the scientists, they are under the mystery because previously Venus had a high amount of water. However, currently there are no water, or rather the Venus is much drier as compared to Earth. Now, they are subjected to various experiments, which is not a subject of this article. However, what is important characteristics of Venus. Now, we are discussing this article because GS paper 3 highlights awareness in the field of space and also exploration of countries to various other planets. It was subject of UPSC question in the 2016 because the question appeared on Mars and India's exploration of the planet through Mangalyaan. Now, in this regard, let us know more about what is this Venus planet. Now, the Venus planet, it comprises of a solid surface because it is one of the 3 inner planets in our solar system as they are quite near to the sun. Further, the size of Venus is nearly same as that of Earth. However, the atmosphere of Venus, it is composed of more than 95% of carbon dioxide. Hence, there is an immense greenhouse gas effect in the Venus's atmosphere. Now, the surface pressure of Venus, it is about 90 times more than that of Earth, whereas as compared to the surface pressure of Mars, the Mars's surface pressure, it is almost 100 of that of Earth. So, the atmosphere pressure of Venus is higher than that of Earth, and the atmosphere pressure of Earth is higher than that of Mars. Further, the Magellan spacecraft of NASA, it discovered the evidence of volcanic activity on the surface of Venus. As about 80% of surface of Venus, it composed of flat plains of volcanic origin. Also, it is important to note that the Venus, it has what you can call a retrograde rotation, which means the Venus, it spins in the direction opposite to the direction it orbits the sun. So this is what retrograde rotation is all about. Further, due to slow rotation of Venus, there is no global magnetic field on Venus, which is quite drastic as Earth has a significant amount of magnetic field. Now there are various missions which will be undertaken by ISRO, NASA and European mission Shukrayaan, Da Vinci, which will be undertaken by NASA in addition to Veritas. Whereas Envision mission, it will be undertaken by the European Space Agency. So based on this information, let us now solve the practice question. Consider the following statements with reference to Venus. The first statement, Venus has an atmosphere largely composed of methane, which is incorrect because I have highlighted about 90% of Venus's atmosphere, it consists of carbon dioxide. Second statement, the atmospheric pressure on Venus, it is 90 times to that of Earth, which is correct. Whereas the third statement, there is no evidence of volcanic activity in Venus, which again is incorrect because Magellan spacecraft of NASA has discovered the evidence of volcanic activity. And because of volcanic activity, 80% of the Venus's surface, it composes of flat plains which are of volcanic origin. The fourth statement, Da Vinci, it is an upcoming mission of the European Space Agency to study Venus, which again is an incorrect statement because Da Vinci is an initiative by NASA and Europeans initiative is highlighted by Envision mission and not Da Vinci. So as only second statement was correct, hence option A is the right answer to this practice question. And with this, we move to the last article of the day, which you can see appeared in the explained section of the Indian Express. Now this article, it highlights that the Antarctic Parliament, it is about to meet in Kochi. So this development, it is important because the article, it deals with the Antarctic Treaty and other important global treaty. They are important from the UPSC perspective, because you can see in the year 2014, questions have appeared on International Treaty on Plant and Genetic Resources, United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification and World Heritage Convention. Further, any treaty on Antarctic, they are important as far as conservation of environment and biodiversity of a important continent such as Antarctica is concerned. Hence, this topic is important from GS Paper 3 perspective. So, in this regard, let us understand what is Antarctic Parliament is all about. As this Antarctic Parliament, it is aimed to protect the interest of South Pole of our country, which means the Antarctic continent. Now, this Antarctic Parliament, it is attended by first the original 12 parties of the Antarctic Treaty and other important parties who have significant interest in the Antarctic continent. Now, this meeting, it is intended for exchanging information on the continent, consulting together on the matters which are of common interest as far as Antarctic continent is concerned. Now, this meeting formally, it is termed as an Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting. So this is attended not just by the original members of Antarctic Treaty, but also the parties which have significant interest in the Antarctic continent. Now this Antarctic Treaty, it first of all defines what is Antarctica, as it defines any altitude, land or ice shelf which is located south of 60-degree latitude. Further, it was originally signed in the year 1959 by 12 countries and it entered into force in 1961, and since then it has been acceded to by many other nations, and currently it consists of 56 parties, which also includes India. Now all the members of Antarctic Treaty, they intend to make Antarctic as a global common, which means that the Antarctic territory will only be used for peaceful purposes, which means there will be no military bases. Further, no country will be able to claim sovereignty over Antarctica solely by the basis that they are setting up their research stations there. Further, there will be no nuclear explosion or disposal of radioactive waste in the continent or the lands of Antarctica. Further, India is also a party to Antarctic Treaty as it signed this treaty in the year 1983. Further, India has also established certain research stations in Antarctica, because previously India established Dakshin Gangotri, which has since been decommissioned, and India currently has two stations, that is Maitri and Bharti. And in this year's meeting that will happen in Kochi, India will propose setting up of another station which will be termed as Matri second. Further, in year 2022, India enacted the Antarctic Act, which reformed its commitment towards Antarctic Treaty. So, based on this information, let us now solve the practice question, which highlights consider the following statements regarding Antarctic Parliament. Now, it is an annual meeting under the ambit of Antarctic Treaty, which you can see from this particular screenshot that it is a annual meeting which is known as Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting, and it happens every year, and it is attended by original 12 parties in addition to parties who have significant interest in the Antarctic continent, and they are known as consultative parties. So let us discuss the second statement. As only the original members of the treaty can participate in it, which we know is incorrect because the original 12 parties, they attend this meeting in addition to consultative parties also. So as only first statement is correct, hence option A is the right answer to this practice question. So with this, we conclude our today's DNS, but please make sure to watch this podcast which was done by me, and I asked questions to our PSIR faculty, that is Rahul Puri sir, and he gave his opinion on the current ongoing situation in Iran. Now this podcast is available on a separate channel, that is Raus IAS Talks. So please subscribe to this channel if you want to stay updated to various affairs of both international and of domestic interest. So with this, I conclude our today's session of Daily News Simplified, and we'll see you again tomorrow at 6 p.m. sharp. So until then, I bid you a very good night.